Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good morning, everyone. All right, I hope everyone's ready for an hour meditation today. Kidding. I did that last night since some people were not here. All right, so we are back in class session. Last class we simply just went over the basics that I will not repeat because I told you I don't repeat. So, but this time around in the class semester, we're going to be recovering the 5 hindrances. 5 hindrances are the 5 obstacles that we will all face in and off of the meditation cushion, but more emphasized during meditation, obviously, because we're sitting, doing nothing. So we'll be focusing on each of the 5 hindrances for the next 5 classes over the course of the next few months, all for it to ready us for our half-day intensive meditation retreat. As some of you know, that's been to our retreats, our full-day retreats from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's a staggering of Dharma talks, meditation sessions, chanting, chores, breaks, etc. However, our half-day intensive retreat is the opposite. As in, there is no chore work, there's no chanting, there's one Dharma talk session, but it'll be 6 hours of meditation out of the 7 hours you'll be here. So it's an hour of meditation, sitting meditation, 20 walking, 45 sitting, 30 walking, an hour sitting, 20 walking, etc., etc. So that will really challenge you in your practice, I hope. It's the first time I'll do this openly for the public. Usually it's just our students that are capable usually of doing this. So if you feel like yourself is capable, feel that you are capable of participating in such intensity, feel free to challenge yourself, see what you're able to do and cannot do. No one's expected to sit and be perfect. Some of you may fall asleep. Some of you may start snoring. If you do, you know that I have my meditation stick that I just go around and start smacking you with it. Anyway. Alrighty, so the 5 hindrances. 5 hindrances. Pancha nivarana. 5 hindrances are desire, or specifically sensual desire, ill will and aversion, sloth and torpor, or laziness as they call it, restlessness and worry, and doubt. These are the 5 main categories of distractions or obstacles that arise during our meditation practice. And every distraction, every thought, emotion, idea, perception that arises within meditation will and can fall within one or more of these 5 hindrances. And so the objective of our practice, especially during this time around, is to observe our meditation to see what are these distractions doing and where they fall under. So for each class that we go over the hindrances, our main focus during the meditation session, your object of meditation is going to be whatever hindrance we're on. So for Teddy, for instance, it's going to be desire or sensual desire. So pay super careful attention to your mind during this session and see what type of desires arise. Desire specifically, desire has many meanings to it, obviously, right? There's a desire to be rich and famous. There's a desire to do well in life. There's a desire to have a good career, have a nice family, etc., right? These are externalities. These are external desires, which are okay. But in meditation, that desire frame narrows quite a bit, considerably, right? Because in meditation, you may have those short desires of, like food, for instance, right? I'm hungry, it's almost breakfast or brunch or lunch or whatever time it is, right? And so the desire for food arises, or desire of your chore list, your to-do list. It's the weekend. What party are you going to go to? What bar are we going to tonight? Don't get shot. Whatever it may be, right? But then desire in this case, in this sense, is also the very subtle desires that arise in our minds, like the subtlety of being obsessive over a passion we have, right? A hobby, for instance. You're obsessing over daydreaming. A lot of us daydream and wish it was real, right? A lot of us have desires to change things that are unchangeable, or to change outcomes that have already happened, right? So these are the subtle desires that we really don't pay attention to very often. Mostly pay attention to desires that are outside of our mind. Wanting to eat, wanting to buy a house, buy a new car, sex, drugs, etc. Right? All these are externality, the external stuff that are the bigger ones. But the more important, difficult ones to tackle are the ones that are kind of stuck in our mind. Those obsessions and those curiosities and those addictions. And so as we practice in meditation, and what we want to do now is to try to hone and be fully aware of what those desires are, and why they arose, and where they're coming from, right? And you can ask yourself, those questions. Where is desire coming from? Where would it lead if I were to do what my desire is wanting to do? What would be the outcome? Would it be a positive? Would it be wholesome, unwholesome? Would it be a bad outcome, right? And so you can start to contemplate through those thoughts. Because as humans, we're very reactionary, right? We see something that we want, we go ahead and just take it or do what we need to do to get to it. We try to obtain as much as we can obtain in the world, but we don't very often think of the consequences. We don't really very often think of the outcome, right? We're so habitual in getting and taking what we want when we want it that we don't think of the consequence of that potentiality. And so in meditation, since we're pretty static and stagnant in one place, you have an opportunity to kind of think beyond the immediate desire. You have some time, right? It'll take a few seconds, maybe a minute or two. But you can ask yourself these questions. Why is this here? Where did it come from? What is it trying to convince me to do? Right? And from there, you can contemplate, you can see how this desire would either be beneficial or unbeneficial for you and for others. Because desire, if we go back to Buddhist basics, right, is part of the second noble truth. The second noble truth stating that the cause of our suffering is desire. But it's the attachment that we have to those desires that causes actual suffering. Because don't think that desire is something that we want to avoid entirely. It's not a bad thing necessarily. What's bad about desire is our attachment to, our clinging to that desire, of wanting to do anything and whatever it takes to achieve that desire. It could be murdering someone, it could be throwing someone out under the bus, it could be cheating your way around it, stealing your way around it, right? You're so obsessed with this desire, you're doing anything you can to obtain it. And that's that attachment to that obsession is what causes actual suffering. But even in meditation itself, right, attachments here are not just to the things that we desire necessarily externally, but it's also important to know that once you are practiced enough in meditation and you get to a point of where your mind is pretty settled, it's tranquil for a good amount of time, and you're in a state of absorption, right, or a state of pre-jhana, right, mental absorption, where, because in the jhanic states, it's the perfect state where your mind needs to be for perfect meditation, right? It is the, more or less the goal of our meditation is to obtain jhana. But until then, we work our way up to that point. And one of the points that gets us there is a state of mind called access concentration, right? And like it sounds, gives us access to jhana, the superior meditation. But in that access concentration piece, or even before that, our meditation can be quite calming, pretty tranquil, right? That calming, tranquil state of meditation is also a desire. It can also become an attachment, because you can be attached to that feeling of calmness and tranquility. Like, oh, this feels good. I don't want anything more than this. This is perfect. This is what I want. Right? And so you block yourself from advancing even further. And if you try to advance, like, you know what, this doesn't feel as good as this stage. Let me backtrack. So you're demoting yourself from higher levels of meditation to the lower meditations, because the lower meditations it has less headache, less work to get there, right? Because the higher levels you go, the more work you have to put into your practice. But a lot of people don't want to put in the work. They're like, I got to this point, I'm okay with it, right? You're like, as if you graduated from high school. I'm like, that's all the education I need. I don't really need a college education. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But if you've convinced yourself that this point of mind of meditation is it, then you're static. There's no advancing, right? So it's important to know, even though you get to these calm, peaceful states of mind, it's important to know this is not the end. This is not what meditation is. This is just a little teaser, right? You're being teased. This is a trailer. It's a meditative trailer of what can actually become. Another way in our meditation is in the form of expectations. And if you've been to my Dharma talks in the past, you know that expectations are one of the things I try to beat out of you. Right? Because expectations is a desire for results. And since we cannot control 99.99999999999 affinity% of what happens in the world, our expectations are useless. Expectation also comes in the form of what's the word? It'll come to me in a bit. But the point is that when we expect a specific or type of outcome, especially in meditation, right? People that come to meditation expect to sit and have zero thoughts, to not think of anything, to be tranquil, to be happy, to be peaceful. I'm like, Zen, I'm going to be perfect by the time I leave this class. But you come and sit, and you're like, this is not what I want. You're completely distracted, you're daydreaming, you're worried about the door opening and closing, you're worried about why the dogs are barking, you're worried about why the person next to you is humming, or whatever it may be. Right? Your expectations of a peaceful, silent sit is not met. And what happens when that expectation is not met is you can get angry about it, you can get defensive, you can be intolerant of the class or of the people around you. And so when we're able to recognize these expectations, right, in meditation, it helps us to see them as they are, to be able to let go. One of the biggest misconceptions of meditation, and I've said this many times, is people think that meditation means to not think, to have a completely clear mind of no thoughts, no distraction. right? That's what most people think about meditation is. Maybe when you're a Zen master, and none of us here are Zen masters, right? So until then, meditation is not about not thinking. You can think all you want. Thinking is natural, right? You can't stop the thinking process. When you try and you fail, you get angry about it. Why can't I not stop thinking? So the objective here is not to not think, because you can't stop it. The objective is to be aware that you're thinking. Because when you're aware that you're thinking, then you can see it happening in real time. Make that mental note. Label it that you're thinking, or there's a distraction, or whatever it is. A sound, hunger, pain, jealousy, whatever it is, right? We give it that label. That's why labeling is very important in meditation. It's because it allows you to see it when it happens, as it's happening, say, hey, I caught you. I caught you, anger. You're under arrest, right? And so once you arrest the distraction, then it's like, okay, fine, I'll back down. And that thinking stops momentarily until another distraction arises, right? And then you go arrest that distraction. A desire arises. You go and arrest that desire. So whatever arising, the point of labeling is to arrest whatever is occurring as it's occurring. Sometimes it may take a few seconds to recognize the thought or the distraction, maybe a few minutes. It could even take you the whole sitting session to recognize, like, oh wait, I've been sitting for 30 minutes daydreaming about lunch. That's fine. However long it takes you to recognize that distraction is perfectly fine. There's no perfect time to catch. I mean, there is. But generally speaking, it doesn't really matter how long it takes you to recognize the distraction. Because eventually, with practice, right, that's why we say practice makes perfect. It's because as you practice, as you continue to work through labeling and recognizing these distractions and thoughts and opinions and emotions and feelings, the more you work toward recognizing those as they arise, as they happen, then you start to reprogram your mind to recognize those more quickly. And as you practice, and over many, many sessions, those distractions will be either shorter, right, in length. Maybe they go from a few minutes to a few seconds, and it eventually goes from a few seconds to not happening at all. So you have less and less distractions over time. And that's the goal here, is to just recognize it and watch it fade away. Because as soon as you see it and you label it and you arrest it, it's like, okay, you caught me. You become like a Medusa. You statue it. You freeze it in its place. And once you do that, it'll naturally just go away, right? And one of the biggest problem with desire is most of our desires are created because of pleasurable feelings that came with those desires, right? That's why we desire things. It's because they were pleasurable. I brought this board out for a reason and I didn't touch it. But now I'm going to use that reason. Wait. Wrong lesson plan. Excuse me, chicken writing. Come with a long line of doctors and lawyers. Anyway, I forgot where I was talking about. What was I? Pleasure, yes. So most of our desires stem from the root of pleasure, right? Especially with food. Right, because desire comes in many forms, from the subtleties of I want chocolate, or I want a sandwich, to the bigger obsessions and addictions that we have in life, right? So our desires stem from things that are pleasurable, and so we're consistently going after those pleasant feelings over and over again, right, to satisfy us. And as soon as you get that pleasurable feeling back, you're like, okay, this is cool, but now I want more, right? And so your desires just stem from having that one piece of chocolate to having 5 pounds of chocolate to having 16 pounds of chocolate, more and more and more, right? So that comes from our desire of the senses, of our 5 senses, right? And so part of our meditation is also the ability of emancipation, right? Of letting go of those desires. So in a way, we want to turn off the desires of our sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, right? Because these are the things that cause those pleasurable feelings, as according to the senses. And so in meditation, part of our practice is to not just recognize and see those desires that stem from the senses, but to eventually be able to kind of turn them off to a point, right? And when you get to the higher levels of meditation, like in jhana, those senses start to shut off one by one, right? There's four main levels, stages of jhana, and for each one, a specific type of sense pleasure kind of shuts off, right? I won't touch much on the aversion, but the other part of our pleasant feelings is the unpleasant feelings, right? So now, as we sit, we may simply like, okay, I want to sit, I want to have a good, calming session. I want 0 distractions. I want this to be a perfect session, right? That's your pleasure. That's your desire. On the other hand, you're also averse to wanting the opposite. I don't want to sit and be distracted the whole time, right? Or my feet or legs are falling asleep, right? I don't want that. I don't want to be hungry. I don't want to be able to hear the sounds. I wish, whatever it is, right? So anything that you don't want is also a desire, technically, right? Because you don't want the pain. You don't want the distraction, right? The wanting, underlying, exclamation point. And so when we're able to recognize as we sit in meditation and see what arises and how they arise and where they arise from, then it's easier to recognize which category they fall under. Because for each hindrance, there's also an antidote, right? The Buddha didn't just give us the problem, but he gave us a way to solve that problem as well. And so one of the things we do when we are inflicted with desire is to give it the antidote. Who wants to guess what the antidote is? Not you, Vinny, because I know you know the answer. What is the antidote to desire, or sensual desire? Yes. More specifically? Close. It's also detachment. But what is common among anything and everything in the universe? Regardless of its age or its size. What is everything? Impermanence. So the antidote to our desires is to recognize that this desire, as much as it gives us happiness and pleasure and satisfaction, that it is impermanent. What happens when we have a pleasant feeling or pleasant emotion? We want more of it, this feels great. I want to do it again. Or I want to have it again. I want to eat it again. So you just accumulate these obsessive desires of wanting more and more and more, without recognizing it as much as you have it. Because it's impermanent, it's never going to last. That's why you want more of it. I ate a whole pint of ice cream last night. Don't ask me why. But I ate a whole pint of ice cream. And I had a desire of more. I was like, dang, this is so good. I want more of it. It's my favorite ice cream, pistachio, just FYI. If anybody's wondering, I love pistachios. But anyway, I know, it's craving for sure. I haven't had ice cream in years, FYI, right? And so when I had it yesterday, I don't know why, because it was so cold. I was like, man, this is so good. I just want more of it. But it's important to know that if you're able to catch yourself doing that, stating to yourself, I want more, right? It should pop a little light bulb should pop. It's an aha moment. It's a short spark of enlightenment. Another thing that we forget about or misunderstand that enlightenment is this big fireworks show, right? That this huge, in the sutras it states that when a being becomes enlightened, that the world's shake in 6 directions or 10 directions, right? So we're expecting like this huge earthquake, and nothing happens. But that's not exactly how it works. Well, I mean, I don't know, I'm not fully enlightened. But I'm assuming when you become fully enlightened, something miraculous will happen. But in the meantime, there are more subtle, smaller moments of enlightenment, right? So don't expect an earthquake in 10 directions to happen. We have those little aha moments. But those little aha moments are moments of enlightenment. Don't discourage yourself, or don't try to convince yourself that enlightenment or attaining something is this big show, right? It's these little subtle aha moments. It's these moments that are have complete clarity in your mind, and it's fully understood, and you can see its initiation, its process, and its destruction. When you can see that and understand it fully, and see that as impermanent, right? Because everything has a cause, everything has its process, but everything will also be destroyed. Things will last for a very, very long time, but nothing will last forever. And so if we're able to remember that and convince ourselves of that with the things that we love and desire, then it's much easier to accept its impermanent nature. So that when it's gone or used up or it's finished, we can say, this is impermanent. I understand that my desire for it was great during the process, but now it's done and I can let it go without seeking to want more. And when you come to that realization, that aha moment, then it's easier to repeat that process for everything else, in and out of meditation. It's easier in meditation because you have the time and space to really think about it. It's more difficult to see that outside in everyday lives. But the more we practice in meditation, the more we are able to reprogram our minds to recognize those things during meditation and more quickly, then we're able to take that practice off the cushion and utilize it in everyday life. And that way, when we're eating something that we enjoy eating, that we can enjoy it as we're eating, versus scoffing it all up and say, oh, I can't wait to have this again. The simple statement of, oh, I can't wait to have this again, is a desire for it again in the future. So you're going to continue to go after it more and more and more. But if you're able to sit and just enjoy the food as you're eating it, right? Pay attention to its flavors, to its texture, its temperature, and really enjoy just eating. It sounds mundane, but if you enjoy it as it's happening, then you don't have to worry about enjoying it again in the future. Because what if it never happens again, right? What if one of the ingredients of that food that you're eating suddenly just disappears off the face of the planet? Or maybe the animal that you're eating is now extinct, or whatever it is, right? So that if you don't enjoy the food as you're having it, you don't know if you'll ever be able to have it again in the future. But if you enjoy it at that same moment, and know that it is impermanent and it may never happen again, then you can enjoy it. And know that in the future, later on, I've enjoyed this food. You're not continually going after that desire for it. And then as we're in meditation practice, if we're able to, when we're able to recognize the desire, like we did kind of when we were doing our Vipassana practices last year, right? In Vipassana, we went over the practice of starting with our object meditation of the breath, right? And then whatever arises around you, any feelings, emotions, or pains, or discomforts that you have within your body, any sound that we hear externally, the door, the AC, the dogs, you're going to shift your mind, your object of meditation, from the breathing to whatever is occurring, right? And so the sound of the AC now becomes your object of meditation until it stops. And then you go back to your breath. The door opens, we hear people talking, you shift your object of meditation from your breath to the people talking, or to the door opening, to the sound, the dogs barking, until it's done and you go back, right? So you're shifting your object of meditation according to what is happening when it's happening. And so when we meditate on the 5 hindrances, we kind of do the same thing. We'll start out with our meditation on the breath, and then as emotions arise, as distractions arise, as feelings arise, we shift our object meditation to that. And we watch it, and we recognize it for what it is. And this is where we start to label it one of the hindrances. You can probably make an educated guess as to whatever arises and where to put them in the categories, right? If you're feeling pain and you don't want the pain, it's aversion. If you're dozing off or you're tired, it's restlessness. Or if you're too hyper and you have too much energy, if you're tired and dozing off, it's sloth or laziness. But if you're hyper and you have too much energy, then you're restless. Or if you're thinking, am I doing this right? Is this the right way to meditate? Then it's doubt. You're doubting the practice. So whatever arises, use an educated guess, since we haven't gone through them in detail yet, to see where you can label or categorize each of your distractions or emotions or feelings, whatever. But pay special, close attention to any of the desires. And recognize what kind of desire is this, right? What desire, what sense pleasure is this fulfilling? Is this desire fulfilling? Since this is specifically talking about sensual pleasure, desire. Categories. The easier it is for you to recognize what is causing us the most suffering, right? One of the things I've told you about that is good when it comes to labeling is that you can create these buckets of labels, right? And from the buckets of labels, you can create like this pie chart, for instance, right? And say the bucket that I labeled pain is 30% of this pie chart. And the bucket of desiring for food is 25%, etc., etc. Then, when you create these buckets, create this chart, you can see what arises the most during your meditation. What is causing you the most distress? What is causing you the most suffering? What is causing you the most distractions? What is causing what topic or what area of your life is causing you to have a not so perfect meditation? And when you're able to see that mentally and see what is always arising, or what is causing the most whatever of the 5 hindrances, now you have something that you can work with. If it's anger, for instance, right? You're like, okay, I'm always angry. Why am I always angry? And you kind of go through that course of anger. And the anger may come because of a person, for instance, right? This person always comes up in your mind. It could be an ex, it could be a parent, it could be a child, it could be whatever it is, right? But they're always arising during this meditation, or all my meditations. So now that you've pinpointed what and who and why this is always arising, now you have something to work with. You have something tangible. You have something that is specific. And because of that, now you have options. The options are, of course, up to you. You can distance yourself from that person. You can unfriend them. You can ghost them. I don't know. You can do whatever you need to distance or leave that situation. And once you do that, or once you tackle the problem, now you have one less thing that's going to arise during meditation. So now your 100 buckets become 99 buckets, because you've eliminated one of the buckets. It doesn't seem like a lot, but eventually, as you eliminate bucket after bucket, you'll end up with just a few buckets. And eventually, you'll have no buckets at all. And our end goal of no thinking is achieved. But that cannot be achieved if you don't know what's going on in your mind. Right? There's a quote here from the Sangarabo Sutta. The Buddha says, it's a metaphor for the 5 hindrances that he gave. And he says, in the Sangarabo Sutta, compares our practice and meditation to trying to see our reflection on the surface of water in a pail. When we're caught in sense desire, it's like the water is made opaque with dyes and other substances. When we're caught in ill will, it's like the water is boiling. When we're caught in sloth and torpor, it's like the water is covered over with algae and slime. When we're caught in restlessness and worry, it's like the surface of the water is ruffled by the wind. Finally, when we're caught in uncertainty or doubt, it's like the water is not only turbid from being stirred up, the whole pail's been hidden away in the dark. Okay. I'm running out of time. Sorry? Read it again. So the Buddha compares our practice and meditation to trying to see our reflection in the surface of water in a pail. When we're caught in sense desire, it's like the water is made opaque with dyes and other substances. When we're caught in ill will, it's like the water is boiling. When we're caught in sloth and torpor, it's like the water is covered over with algae and slime. When we're caught in restlessness and worry, it's like the surface of the water is ruffled by the wind. And when we're caught in uncertainty or doubt, it's like the water is not only turbid from stirring up, but the whole pail has been hidden away in the dark. Good? Okay. Another quote here is, when sensory desire is transcended, the mind of the meditator has no interest in the promise of pleasure or even comfort with this body. The body disappears and the 5 senses all switch off. The mind becomes calm and free to look within. The difference between the five sense activity and its transcendence is like the difference between looking out of a window and looking into the mirror. The mind that is free from the five sense activity can truly look within and see its real nature. Only from that can wisdom arise to what we are, from and why, from where and why. So this goes back to being able to turn off the sense activities of the body and enter a state where there is no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch. After a while, when you have at least not perfected, but at least have a pretty strong ability to concentrate in meditation, after a while, you can, one of the first senses that kind of go away is the sense of sound. So when you come in the zone, right, even outside when you're doing something, for instance, when you're really in the zone of doing it, right, people can be talking to us or yelling our name, we don't hear them because we're so concentrated in what we're doing, right? And so in meditation, it's the same way. When we're fully concentrated, then these senses slowly fall off. First, it's the faculty of hearing. That shuts down. The faculty of touch is the next one that shuts down. And it kind of goes down the list of being shut off, one at a time. And once those are shut off, then you're in a perfect state of not worrying about what's happening. You're not worried about the pains and aches you feel in your body. You're not worried about your lunch that's coming up. You're not worried about the person always hammering you. I don't know. But you turn off everything that is causing these hindrances to arise. So that is our objective in this semester, is to be able to recognize what hindrances arise, why they arise, where they're coming from, the causes of them arising, and then use the antidote for each to eliminate them until we have a perfect, serene meditation. Okay, I'm over my time. What questions do you have? Concerns? Emotional outbursts? Yes, sir.
So, irrelevant and relevant, it's the same as the desire to get rid of, attachment to the desire to get rid of, right? Is it the same or is it
I'm sorry, say again?
get something, not get rid of something.
Mm-hmm.
So, like to cut it down.
Please rise for our walking meditation. Please sit down. One thing that I forgot to mention about walking meditation, because I always do, is that in one of the ways that we can easily see how our desire arises is during walking meditation. Because unlike sitting meditation, we're static in one place, hopefully we have our object of meditation as our focus and concentration, so it's easier to see our desires as they arise. But in walking meditation, or even walking in general, we have a habit of what? Looking around. And so it'll be walking, and instead of being present and mindful of the walk, instead you see something in the corner of your eye, and our habit, natural habit, is to look and see what it is, right? And so by the simple act of looking, you're fulfilling that desire to see what it is, right? And so that should be a spark of, oh wait, that's desire. So if you notice yourself looking around or asking questions or seeing what's pleasant or unpleasant, whether it's the people around you or the statues or the beads and malas or whatever it may be, observe those observations. See what is happening, why they arose. What about them allowed you or made you want to look, make you want to judge, make you want to go after it. So be mindful when you walk. Ask yourself, why did I look? What was there? What caused me to step out of the meditation zone into the zone of non-meditation, to the realm of non-meditation? What was so fascinating that caused you to stop meditating, to look, to fulfill the desire to observe and see what's there? What about it brought so much pleasure that it forced you out of meditation into its observation? And most of the time it's just something mundane, something stupid, something just moving around. It could be a fly, it could be an animal, it could be something colorful, right? But the more you're able to see yourself, or the more you're able to recognize how often we get distracted by our desires, will hopefully trigger something in the mind that I'm full of desire. I'm full of wants and needs and curiosities. And for the most part, they're never bad. They're not always bad. But by recognizing how often it's happening, hopefully will trigger your mind to think, okay, it's happening way too much. I need to really hone down and be all gung-ho and be mindful and aware and meditative. And the more you convince yourself to do that, the easier it'll become to not be aware or not be so instinctively wanting to see what is in the corner of the eye. Especially if you are here for the first time or you're new and you either never seen the back room or you've never seen the front room. Typically what you're going to do is wander and look around and look at this place, which is fine. Just don't do it while you're meditating. It's the whole purpose. Okay, I'm going to stop. Any observations or experiences anybody wants to share? You have 3 minutes.
So you tell us that
You can, if your mind allows it to let it go. If not, then you stick with it and you make that your object of meditation.
I like that question because I was thinking about that too. And it's very subtle. And I'll notice it and be there for a while later I realized I wasn't noticing it anymore. Really good example of how things will fall away.
Right. Eventually you'll learn to zone things out. Like I do. Because apparently there's sounds and noises all the time. And I'm like, do you hear that? I don't hear anything.
So much of our behavior is habitual. And we're turning to look at something before we even know we're turning to look. So it sounds like the key is to be aware where you know you want to look. Which is, like I say, that's hard.
Right. And even if you catch yourself looking, right, because your body can sometimes react before your mind can think about it. So even if you found yourself looking, but the moment you recognize that you're looking, just make that notation that you've looked, or you got distracted, and just go back. Right? Again, same thing like with the thinking. It's okay to think, just be aware that you're thinking. Don't entertain the thoughts. Don't entertain what's going on in the mind. Likewise, when you look around, when you're walking and you get distracted, don't entertain the thought of the distraction. And when I say that is if you turned around to see something colorful or something you saw that you liked at the gift shop, right? Entertaining it means, oh, what is it? How much is it? How big is it? What do I do with it? Versus, that's pretty. Okay, go back to your meditation. There we go. Good example.
Making a unique object of meditation does not mean like we attach to it, try to find out like I just really can we set it off, like we just try to keep thinking about that music and get lost in there, like so it's just object of meditation is just music playing and just that is the first sense of hearing it and receptive, but it's like something is doing sound.
Right.
But we're not kind of like attaching ourselves to it and this is bad. It's not like this. It should not be there. So
Yes. Right. Because having something as your object in meditation doesn't mean playing with it. Doesn't mean interacting with it. It just means that you're bringing that object of meditation as your focus of observation. Right? Because your object of meditation shall always be in your foreground. The distractions are all in the background, right? The distractions, your perceptions, your ideas, your feelings, your emotions are all in the background. Anything that's in the background is going to try to come in your foreground and push out your object of meditation, right? And then the distraction tries to take over. But our job is to make sure that nothing gets pushed out. Our object of meditation does not get pushed out. And so if you're listening to the sound, right, because it's the Vietnamese, Namo Yidafat, Namo Amitabha Buddha. So if you hear the sound, for the most part, there's only like one of you that would know what the sound is saying, right? But everyone else is like, what is it saying? Is it English? Is it Sanskrit? Is it Chinese? Is it Vietnamese? And it's all the above. But that does not mean that you're creating that as object of meditation. That means you're obsessing, you're attaching to what the sound is. What is it saying? Where is it coming from? Why is it there? That's not an object of meditation. An object of meditation is simply being aware that the sound is there, that you hear it. And so you just focus on the sound. You don't have to play with it. Yes, sir.
Is that where you're talking about the sensation and perception? So in the sensation, that's when we're getting the physical input through our senses. But the perception is what we color. Like when you write a story.
Right.
So that's what we try to do. Sometimes, we can't control if somebody makes a sound. We can't control those vibrations coming to our body and our body hearing it. But when we go into the perception of it, is that when we're trying to write a story about it?
Exactly. Yes, because the Buddha would tell us when there is perception, there's deception. Because our perceptions are typically always wrong. The perception is where we make up stories. So if we're sitting in meditation and someone opens the door, our habit thinking is to ask, who's there? Why are they late? Why are they disturbing my meditation? They should have been here an hour ago, right? We create a story for the simple sound of the door opening. But that story that we created may be true, if you're lucky, but 99% of the time it's going to be wrong. Right?
The doors closed, the sound has ceased, and then 10 minutes later you're still thinking about it.
Right. You still have an attachment to that. Versus the correct way is you sit, you hear the door open, okay, make that label, sound, or door, or visitor, or guest, whatever you want to do it, right? Because if you create perceptions, you're creating a story. The story is most likely going to be false. This is not seeing things as they are. In Buddhism and in meditation especially, our goal is to see things as they are, or to observe things as they are, which is simply the label that we created for the story. Not the story we've added to it, not the entertaining thoughts of who, what, why, and where. The simple fact of the door or the sound is the correct response. That's right.
The trick is to do it without being self-critical, which is my tendency. I get mad at myself.
And that's why we add these labels to buckets, not to our pockets. Because if you add it to your pocket, then you're just going to hold on and take that label with you everywhere. If you place it in a bucket, you keep it, and you can walk away from it. Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind, until you need it. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'm already way over time. Okay, good. Good job, everyone. Desire is probably the longest one. I think in my notes I have like 9 pages on desire because it's really the longest. But I tried to, hopefully I did a good job of condensing it for everyone. Okay, anyway, so we'll meet in 2 weeks, probably. I don't know what the dates are. And there's service tomorrow at 12:30 as well. And Buddhism 101 on first and third Tuesdays. And of course our meditation will continue until the end of June. No, April. I'm sorry? Yes. All right. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Thank you.